have with us Reverend Peter Reardon, who is our dear friend and representative for the state of Texas and all of those regions. So welcome, Peter. We are very happy to have you here. He has been our great help and support and my friend for so many years that I'm really happy that we could arrange this. Now, I am not about to take away any words from him, but let us say what we are concerned with here and what we have been concerned in this place for many, many years since I belong to it is exactly that esoteric tradition. And because one of the latest developments of which is the Theosophical Society, which owns this building, and you might say which for about 60 some years has owned me. So we are very happy. Come on in, and we are very happy to have you here. And I am also so very happy to have my friend Peter here, who will tell us about his view. He is a well accredited person in many fields. He is a very active Freemason. He is a very active Martinist, and he is a very active priest in our Gnostic churches. Now, with all those activities, you wonder how he can sit in one place for any length of time, but that is one of the greater mysteries that we need to confront. So anyway, and then when he goes back to his Texan domicile, we will, to the extent that my body holds up, which is already, which after all, most of you know that I'm 94 years old now, which is quite a lot, but as long as this body holds together, there is still always going to be a program with myself in it on Friday evening. So just keep that in mind when you look at our programs, you will see what the particular subjects are. Thank you very much for having come, because I was somewhat apprehensive that this being the first of the lectures, that people would be doing back home what I would be doing, which is, but you have not, and you have come, and we are very happy about that. So, Peter Reardon, the chair is yours.
Thank you, Bishop.
That is a very nice chair. It looks very beautiful, but it is also one that hurts your back like no other business. So if that becomes a problem, then we'll get another chair for you. Peter Reardon.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, Bishop Heller, for the wonderful introduction. I have a friend in the esoteric tradition who I met named Don Heller, and he once told me that when he was younger, he always dreamed of really meeting important and interesting people, meeting people with ideas that were exciting and challenging to him, and he didn't know how to get into that room. And he told me that he finally figured it out. He says, you have to become them. So for me, I'm very humbled to be in this chair and very grateful to be here with all of you, whom I don't know all of you, but many of you are my friends and have been with me here for a long time. In Austin, we have our own community that's like yours. In fact, we're doing our best to make it exactly, although we're just doing our best. So, but here, this is the mothership. This is the model. And when we are having, 11:30 on Sunday, that bell rings. And even though we're in a different time zone, it's out of time. We're ringing with you. So, and ringing with you, Bishop. So let me get to the material proper. One thing about the Gnostic Society is that I've heard the bishop say before, we don't do book reviews. I think also we don't do book reports. So when we're dealing with specific subjects of antiquity or of the esoteric tradition or of the matters pertaining to consciousness, it's not just we're reviewing things that happened a long time ago. And isn't that interesting? That we are analyzing and discovering the author's intent of these ancient subjects and discourses. That's not enough. The thing that is essential and important, that if we could know that intent, well, that's great. That's wonderful. But however, what does it mean to us? How could it be meaningful and helpful at this moment? Because let's face it, the people that lived in antiquity, it's okay to say, they were geniuses. They were so enlightened. But in a way, we're really letting ourselves off the hook, because if the reason why they could do those things is because they were genius and enlightened, well, then we don't have to. We can go back home, right? So, but there is an opus to be performed, and the opus is really the opus of the entire Western mystery tradition. It's an opus of consciousness, of the growth and the widening, as Rudolf Steiner would say, the widening of the soul. So, those are grand words. But again, what can we do with that? How can we work with that, and so forth? So in history, there are many examples, right? But really, there's beyond the horizontal plane of time of tradition. God willing, there are many points where there is a vertical intercession, where people have been and will be and are touched by the transcendent dimension. And that's really where the rubber meets the road and where things are happening. And perhaps the history is evidence that it's occurred. And a great wonder of that is that it can be evidence that it can happen again, and especially to us, God willing, a lot. So that's really the work to be done. And so one of the keynotes I'd like to speak about this evening is particularly that of magic. And so magic is something that a lot of people in our alienated technological age thinks there's terms like magical thinking, which really kind of redounds to these people are sort of irrational, and they can't really be trusted because or depended upon because their head is in the clouds or what have you. But I would like to make some postulations. These are not dogmas I'm pronouncing, but we have to have some kind of basis to start from, that we can kind of talk about it and that we can get somewhere. So one idea I would like to just say off the bat, I'll give it away, that really the purpose of magic is not necessarily to cause a great boon to come your way, to find your car keys, to find a new boyfriend or girlfriend, or to become incredibly wealthy, to think and to grow rich. Although, that may happen. And it doesn't disprove the reality of magic. And if anything, those are really side effects of the art. And that another idea is that magic is just something that's nebulous in the world, like some kind of spiritual tapioca pudding. Oh, everything is magic. Oh, my goodness. I stepped on magic. Am I in trouble? But that the construct of magic is really, it's called an art. the ars. It's a discipline that has been created a long time ago by people who had experience for the purpose of the increase in consciousness, right? So, sort of like setting out that kind of very declarative statement of what it is. You have to go with me here on this one. So, in the past, we have evidence that this is the case. And I promise this is not a book report and it's not a lecture and a history lesson like that, but I want it to be something that we can get personal. And so, like, if we go all the way back to the chalky caves of the Ariage Mountains, what is there? You know, in the handprint, in burnt ochre, on the wall, what is it? It's the figure of the shaman with the horns, dancing by the fire, you know? Magical thinking? Well, I will tell you that this, as the great poet Mircea Eliade, and who's really a scholar of magic in the esoteric tradition, said that there is a certain kind of initiation, which is the initiate becomes a technician of ecstasy, you know? So, in other words, there's some sort of foundational teaching and system here that is within society, where certain people, largely to their proclivities and observations and so forth, are free of certain filters. Imagine this time. People are immensely practical. It's a dangerous time. There's saber-toothed tigers chasing you down the street and, you know, nipping at your heels, right? And someone takes the time to make this ancient, archaic work of art. And although they draw the animals and those things too, they draw the shaman, right? So what's happening? Well, we can speculate, as I have done. Another example is in the Mesoamerican period, when the Spanish conquistador, the big ships are coming in. All the people who would stare out into the sea, what did they observe? Did they observe the big sea? They didn't. They were invisible. They couldn't see them at all. What it took was the shaman, who had already had experiences in the other world, where the filters of perception were changed, transformed. He could say, listen, stand here, I'm holding your head right there, like a cloud, like a great roaring, upwelling spring. You see the field of white, and all of a sudden, they could see it every time, right? Why couldn't they see it? This is a good evidentiary statement that in our world now, perhaps there are many things where we need the shaman to hold our head and point in a certain direction and say, now stop, just like the thing you've already experienced. And I'll add another, a more recent one. You know, I don't know if anyone has ever had the terrible, unfortunate experience of being in a serious car accident. One of the things that is reported that is experienced is that some sort of phenomenon, as the two physical objects are careening towards each other, there are reports that time slows down and everything is perceived in slow motion. And the people who report this are emphatic that it is a regular sort of state of consciousness. However, it's just like you put it in slow speed. And so this is reported so many times. There was actually, how do you test this? There was the University of Texas at San Antonio. What they did is they erected a 7-story high scaffolding. And the professor was at the top who was conducting the experiment. And he managed to get some grad students for $50 to climb the scaffolding with them. And then with the idea they were going to be pushed off into a stuntman bag. And they were told explicitly to look at the display that's strapped to their arm as they go down, and if they didn't report what they saw, they wouldn't get the money. So they all looked, and The thing is you look at it at the top of the stairs. It's like, am I not going to get my money because it's blank? I don't see anything. So keep looking. And so when chucked off the side of this dangerous non-OSHA certified structure, 37. Because what happened is that some fight or flight or some reptile brain thing kicked in, and all of a sudden, in the terror of falling to their doom, even though it was going to be okay, they could perceive things that were flashing outside of normal observation. Very interesting. Could it be also that, all of the great meditators who are experiencing things in these altered states, maybe they're seeing the same kind of between the frames types of imagery. Maybe that's what you see. Maybe there are filters to our perception that an ordinary everydayness we're really closed off from. Certainly. I don't think there's any doubt that that's the case. Also, there are many reports that children see unusual things, experience unusual phenomena. And I don't think it's unlikely at all that as we get older and become adult human beings, that so many things crowd consciousness as to reduce and to minimize the kinds of things that can be perceived in a normal state of consciousness. Luckily, there are other states. And so, what does this really redound to? Essentially, there is in the human life a condition where we encounter many human animals who are perhaps one day, hopefully, will become human beings. Maybe we resemble these ourselves. And maybe some of the time we are also them. But there is a great lack, a great estrangement and alienation in the character of most of humanity, that we find ourselves filling in with objects and experiences of a materialistic and superficial nature. Almost with a passion, almost with a vengeance. And in fact, the more the stirrings of consciousness happens, we have to turn that off and go get a new dishwasher. So this is a substitutional motif for the real need that the ancients declared, that we are more and more in need of becoming our true selves. And by that, I'm not speaking about, there was a magician in the 19th century who said, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And, he's not wrong. However, which thou? Which thou? Whose will? Yeah. So I think that's really the question that the higher forms of magic address. And, that sentence, that statement, can be made congruent, but I think it does take some discernment, right? Also, I'll say this, that the people who lived long ago were not dumb. In the period of time where I was in high school, it was a very short period of time, actually. When I was in high school, I was taught mythology. And one of the things that was explained to me that, the archaic and ancient peoples had their myths and their religions. And the purpose of these myths was to explain natural phenomenon. People would have sex in the field in order to make the crops grow. Which seemed very weird. But, if we think about the Greeks, the Greeks were not dummies. Heard of democracy, philosophy, and so forth. But, in a further reduction to that, the idea of these ancient peoples, people of antiquity and late antiquity, was that, that they had so fully experienced and developed rationalism that that was the highest thing that occurred. That philosophy was the pinnacle of rationality. And that really that's the benefit of our society, and that's really the best who we are. So I would like to maybe, in contradistinction to that, bring up one of the Platonic dialogues between Socrates and one of his students. And so this is a dialogue concerning the ascent of the soul. And so I think this is really getting to my point about the meaning and the purpose and the need of magic. Here it goes. It's between Socrates and Theaetetus. So you have to excuse my poor Greek pronunciation. Theaetetus. Socrates, you have spoken of virtue and of justice and of the harmony of the soul. Yet whenever I ask what finally completes the soul, you fall silent, as though guarding something unsaid. Tell me what remains beyond philosophy. Well, that's a good question. This is something that, oftentimes when we hear discourses between important people that we want to hear from, the questions asked are so dumb. So this is a relief. However, Socrates, the answer is bad. You are impatient, Theaetetus, of course. I guess Theaetetus, of course, is the representative of us, right? Which is a mark of youth and also souls already stirred. Tell me first, do you think sight is complete without light? Certainly not. Not hearing without air, nor thought without form? No. Then why do you suppose that reason alone, unaided, is sufficient for the soul's final awakening? Theaetetus. Because reason seems to be the highest faculty. Oh. Highest, yes, but not the final. For reason is like a guide who leads you to the threshold, but does not cross the door with you. It sounds like Moses who could not enter into Israel. Certainly. Theaetetus. What door do you mean? The door beyond discourse. You speak in riddles again. So I must, for there are things, if spoken openly, cease to be understood. It's important. Tell me, Theaetetus, have you ever loved someone so deeply that words failed you? Yes. And yet, in that silence, did you understand more than speech could carry? I think I did. You mean the rights spoken in whispers of those of Eleusinian things? Are these the rights of philosophy? No. Philosophy is the preparation. The preparation for what? The preparation for dying before death. Very interesting. There is a death of reason that has to occur, and that thinking can only take us so far. That we need to have an experience. And later Socrates goes on to say that there is necessary a memory of the other world. That is the gift that frees. This kind of amnestesis, the anti-amnesia. We need to have an unamnesia of what has happened to us. And so essentially, people now who study Platonic philosophy would tell you the thing that's the opposite of what's said here. He says that philosophy, look, we made it up, but that's it. It's the beginning. It's the start. And the idea from the Neoplatonists of studying philosophy without participating in magic would be laughable. And so in our benighted reason of our age, in the previous more recent ages, it's laughable that this is the highest that we have. It doesn't make us spiritually evolved. In fact, our alienated technological age suffers particularly mostly because of its extroverted really perversion and replacement of this desire for something great and something sacred. That the human being can experience transcendence. That the experience is an experience of sanctification. That somehow some replacement of former passing religious motifs with the technological and like social religion, they carry the same weight and the same burden of the previous ones. A newly baptized Jehovah in moral rectitude or else, with all of the God made in our image, with all the problems of our own lack, our own foibles, our own jealousy and vengeance, which is not helpful, which really is an obstacle to consciousness. That the people long ago, like I said, weren't dumb. In fact, maybe even a more terrifying way, they're us. And by that I mean that there is, in a human life, can be measured what can be done, what can be attained and what can be achieved. And in a way it's incriminating what we could do, what we could have done with this life. There seems to be some very important opportunity of being incarnated. An opportunity not necessarily, like I said, to get more dishwashers, or even to become super healthy, or to become super famous. What good is it at a certain point? I know in Freemasonry, something I'm very devoted to, over here at the Pasadena History Center, there's a statue and a huge bust of a famous Freemason of the Scottish Rite who paid for everything, who made it all happen, did all these things to the community. And even though I'm a member of that Scottish Rite, I asked her, no one had heard of him. At a certain point, you have to do something with your consciousness outside of time. While we're here, there is an opportunity to be more than a human animal, to become really a human being. And so the ancient discipline was created, the art of magic. And this art is a very specific, ceremonial, ritualistic way of having more and more experiences of an extraordinary nature. And these experiences are... There you go, Bishop. These experiences are lead to those veils we were discussing a bit ago falling away by the wayside, falling down, that the more direct approach can happen. And so let me say this. This is not just to kind of have an experience of unusual states of consciousness and all that, although I have to say the magical acts, operation, can be pretty exciting. It can be pretty wild. And that you have an experience that is, well, this is just not in the normal reality paradigm I had previously expected before I began, but can really cause a shifting of gears in consciousness of the limits and the possibilities previously accepted, where they fall away. And if that falls away, well, what could happen? Pretty good. But ultimately, the purpose is like in religion, the word religio, to bend back. It's to get to God. It's that there is a profound transcendental realm and field of reality that we've come from. That really, that's what we're starving to have integrated and incorporated back into our being. That we have, we are sorely in need of more opportunities for these kinds of experiences. And perhaps the more that calls, the more we have those desires, the more the status updates flash more brightly, or the emergencies of impending eviction or car trouble will come. And so, It doesn't mean that we have to ignore them, because you have to be viable. You have to find your way in the world and not fall down. But, as Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, just enough, no more. And the rest belongs to this real wonderful opus of transcendence. So let me talk a little bit about what that might be, because it's a wonderful idea that there is true and real magic in the world that people in the past have experienced through these traditions, that you can too. That it's not something that, like an apostolic time, these miracles occurred and oh boy, here we are. I wish I was there. But we are. We are. There's no difference. So this tradition has some suppositions, some ideas that are proposed. One idea is that there is a vast field of being, a field and region that is not empty, between the individual and the divine. And that this territory, this area, can be experienced and should be experienced. And these kinds of journeys should occur. And that the more we do those kinds of things and participate in this kind of discipline, the more the veils fall away. The more the perceptions come, the more the insights, the more contact we have, the more strengthened consciousness is. And we should. So let me bring up an example of a period of Jewish mysticism known as the Merkava mysticism. And so you think about, this is around, the mythological period of time is between 0 and 300 when this was occurring. And so, you think about all these Jewish men and young boys studying their Torah in a very rationalistic, mental way, trying to decipher all of the Hebrew letters to rearrange them into some Shem Mem Farash, the 72-letter name of God, in order to bring about the other world. And so this is kind of a very explicit, very mental activity. And there were some people who said, we've been talking about this so long, why don't we do something about it? And later a great Kabbalist named Isaac Luria said, those who never met Elijah are not real Kabbalists. So really what it means is you have to go and, it's not enough to study it, and you have to do something. So through special exercises of breath, and then also using the special regalia or vestments of the Jewish priesthood, they cover themselves. They covered their eyes. They darkened the perceptions of the world, and they allowed the images of the unconscious to flood in. And they described what they were experiencing were the mystic flights on the chariot, much in the form of Ezekiel and his ascending into the other world. And so this is a model that was from the Old Testament that it's kosher to have this because he did it, right? So we're going to be okay. So in this, they found that when it went dark and they had an experience of the other, it wasn't the God image that they have been hearing chanted all of these years. It wasn't the God the Father with the great white beard pointing down and said, whatever you do, don't. Instead, they experienced, they had a true experience. And so one can say, okay, this people had an experience, these people had an experience. It's the same reality. They experienced the other world, and they found that there was a tremendous, vast region that was full of supernatural reality. So let's say that there is this kind of experience of the senses that we have. Beyond the senses they experienced. Beyond and beyond and beyond. And ultimately, maybe over hundreds of years, they would go and finally they sort of had an encounter ultimately with the image of God that is an unmanifest, abstract, limitless light. totally non-personified, maybe very un-Jewish, however, maybe ultimately Jewish in this mystical sense. And so they found that in this there was all these other aspects. And so Isaac Luria put it well some years later. He said that there is a phenomenon called the Zimzum. And maybe bear with me here and let's visualize this together. So imagine there is a field of reality that is ultimate, unmanifested, uncreated, full of God, powerful. Nothing is out of phase. No negative, no positive. Ultimate, whole. But somehow, this non-personified divine being asks the question, what would it be like for God to behold God? You know, again, who's to say that God can't also be personified? So in some way, it's asking itself the question. So what happens? In this vision, there is a withdrawal. And in this withdrawal, there's a field of reality where God is not. And out of the ultimate divine essence is poured forth into this void the very substance and nature of God. And it flows forth and it gathers and constellates in what's known as a Sephiroth. And then that one flows into another. And then ultimately these gather more and more of the essence of the non-manifest becoming ultimately down here where we are, manifest into physical reality. And so we can think about it like there's a glacier of the purest and ultimate essence of divine that comes down, and maybe we see like a champagne fountain. It goes here and pours into this one, that pours into this one. And, maybe you didn't wash the dishes just right. So eventually this one has this other kind of character. And then when we get down to here, boy, oh boy, it's not the purest glacier anymore. We're in the Ganges. And maybe you don't want to take more than 3 sips because, it is what it is, right? So with the cattle and everything else, oh boy, I'll stop there. So this image is the image that the Merkava mystics had. And so how did this occur? It occurred, this is a map of experience. It's not a work of fantasy. And fantasy in the sense that people made it up or that someone told them what to do and they're like, okay, I did that. You're going to experience this now. Okay, I got it. No. This is confirmed by perhaps hundreds of years of experience. That's to say, like, if you were a beggar in Calcutta 5,000 years ago, if you go to the other world, you'll have the jaundice of your own symbol system, but it's the same experience of the divine reality. So I'm not saying that we have to have a magical phenomenon of this Western Christian experience, although we do have ourselves this symbol system that frames the approach in the entry into this kind of stream. But really this sort of this essential goal of expanding ourselves out of the realm of the senses into a dimension of transcendent reality, ultimately to get to there, means that we're going to journey, we're going to travel, we're going to ride the Merkava or the magic carpet or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's going to be. We're going to have an experience altogether exciting and wonderful, strange and unusual, that you won't get to announce in advance. What's going to happen will happen. And so the tradition has many ways of sort of warming us up to this. One of the first things that happens is in schools, particularly that of the Golden Dawn, which is a magical society, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was founded in 1888 by really deep-thinking Masons, sort of a lot like the Jews who became the Merkava mystics, who said, okay, well, we've been talking about all these rituals for so long. Well, let's do something. I heard the word magic said, let's let's have some magic. So they sort of gathered together some of these schools and very profoundly have created a structure and a system that has proven itself really to work. And it works because it comes from an authentic root, because it's not something that's made up. It comes from previous existing systems that were effective. And it is, these things, they went away after a certain period of time, but they formed enough of a strong foundation that they continue in various forms, maybe even in this room. So that being said, the entry would be something like the first experience magic or a preparatory phase would be that of divination. And so divination is maybe the burlesquing of divination just be like a plain fortune telling, but really it's more of a consulting the divinities for advice, right? So next Friday there will be something along those lines through the tarot, and the tarot is a beautiful device and unknown by many people, even educated esoteric people, is that the tarot really has as part of its lineage and descent the Kabbalistic system and the glyph of the Tree of Life. That the 22 paths of the Tree of Life, which the paths are just like it sounds, like a way to go, to get back to the Zimzum, to get back to the Ein Sof, or the unmanifest divine reality, to get to that transcendence. So that these paths really have a kind of character and keynote which are described by the Hebrew letters. And so many people not being immersed in Jewish life and the study of the Jewish alphabet and the idea of the Hebrew letter is not only a way of spelling a word, but has a powerful archetypal meaning and really a divine characteristic that can be experienced. It's not coming up in that symbol system necessarily, even if you're Jewish, especially in today's day. That it was thought that the ideograms and the pictographs within the Tree of Life, really within the tarot, could be a key to having the same kind of experience of the character of that path. And having that experience, it could really instead also become like a door that you could go through. That you could contemplate these images, and they're you'll see them next week. I know you've seen them before, but they're really unusual. They're really wild, and the way they're constellated really is consciousness expanding. That really, if you sincerely look into them, there is something going on that is not a paint by numbers painting. I think also for the same reason, it's good to say that people who want to make their own tarot decks, if you feel so inspired, you should. However, I would just say this, that the impregnation of the powerful constellation of symbols is very important. And that if you're doing it for the artwork and the beauty, well, maybe it won't be as effective and so maybe if you have an old one that you don't think is very pretty, that's not the most important part. The most important part is that it is a map with all the places and the directions and the symbols. And so what is a symbol? A symbol is the cipher to the mystery. That the mystery that we're going into, that the symbol unlocks the door and the key turns and turns and turns. So really the entire esoteric Western mystery tradition is built upon these keynotes. In the holy altar of Freemasonry, in the mysteries of Alexandria, in the rites of the Mithras, it's said that you are conducted through the 7 planets by way of your exemplar, who takes you by the hand, and you go to the planet and you encounter the Temper's power at that door. But you have the key. And though you as a candidate or the exemplar maybe don't know it, your guide will speak for you. And he says, I have come in the name of the true light. And I seek virtuously more and more consciousness. And the wrathful entity there will say, you may pass. Ultimately transcending the limitations of the cosmos itself, all the powers, the planetary regions, you can get past them. So this is an idea, an example of what's really happening. It's that really it's these of all the love of astrology and these kinds of things, it's very exciting and interesting. However, if you are ruled by your planets, well, maybe you're not going to make it. The idea is understanding it more and more is good, because then you can get past it. You can overcome the limitations of type. And ultimately, God willing, be able to look through more than 4 doors. Be able to perceive beyond the senses and have kind of your over-the-horizon radar to be more and more awake and more human. So that the first is the divination, which sort of gives you the experience of the entry into the stream of the magical divination, of the magic of the piercing of the veils. And so beyond this, there are other systems too. One of the next very exciting ones is that of the telluric magic of evocation. And so I'm sure you've all heard, maybe at Thanksgiving prayer or at church, someone says, we're going to have an invocation. That's not what I'm talking about. We're going the other way. So this doesn't mean that it's old Mephistopheles, I hate to say his name out loud, is going to come and help our friend Goethe find his way. But rather, the idea is that way back a long time ago in the Middle Ages, it was worked out that there's kind of some order and hierarchy of beings that are related to nature and to the earth and to planetary spirits and these kinds of things. And it's that these entities, these constellations of spiritual power have a kind of wisdom to impart, and that they can be interacted with. And that it can be very interesting. It can be very exciting to have something emerge that was previously undisclosed, and maybe you heard its voice chattering in the back of your head the whole time. It's like, that's who that was. It's better to know. So let me paint a picture of this, right? Of how this type of operation might occur. Let's say a very important figure in this operation would be the magus, the magician. And what does the magician do? The magician stands in, of course, the magic circle. And so what is the magic circle? The magic circle has all of the holy protective names inscribed upon it, and all of the powerful geometrical figures and sigils that pertain to the protection and the calling forth of these types of entities. And so what happens is the magician, the magus, has this bombastic enchanting of calling forth, I summon this entity, this power to come before us now. And so a lot of this happens. And then on the other side of the room, or some distance away, there is another person. This person is the receiver. And the receiver is in a place of protection of a triangle, staring at a tripod. There's tremendous amount of incense. The walls are black, and everyone is in the darkened robes as to limit the things that can be seen in view. And the receiver is holding 2 candles. And what do you imagine that they're looking at? They're not looking at the magus. They're looking at a mirror of their own face. Okay. So the magus calls out, says, okay, do you see anything? And so what happens is there becomes some sort of visible manifestation of the emergence of this telluric form. In tangible, sensory, observable reality. And a voice is heard. And I think if I were to see this being, it would look like this. And sure enough, here it is. And then sometimes a boon is given. Sometimes some kind of information is received. And these kinds of experiences are really very unusual, very exciting. They are not earth-changing. They are not life-altering. But I would say a great and noble purpose they serve is to alter consciousness and to shift gears, that there is a true magic that can be known. Can be known by, it could happen, we could do it right now. You could have this experience right now. It's not something that happened long ago and pretend. It's something that people have done for a long time. And it is really an entryway into a more profound depth of the mystery. And then I would say the next level would be not just the, Father Peter, would you mind saying grace? But rather an invocation. And I postulate probably everyone in this room has had this experience, because the likelihood is you may or may not have come to church here and seen our dear bishop do exactly this act. The invocation of the divine substance into the physical substance that we take into our bodies and are transformed. The magical form of this in the more esoteric form is that the angels are called forth. The angels are petitioned for their service and for connection and communion with and so forth. And then ultimately, the ultimate objective of this kind of ceremonial magic is that of the experience of our true self. The real magic is becoming who you are. And let me say this in maybe a different kind of illusion. There is a name that maybe you've heard called the Holy Guardian Angel. We hear this in the Gnostic scriptures of Jesus coming home and his mother saying, "You were just here. Only it wasn't you. It was like a spirit." And Jesus says, "I've been expecting me." And so he says, "Where am I?" She says, "Well, I tied him to the bed." And so he goes, experiences his divine twin, and they embrace, and they become one. So as far as it goes, the imitation of Christ, if you find yourself tied to the bed, I recommend you do the same. One wonders what kind of bonds would hold such a spirit, though, however. But, very beautiful and amazing symbol and myth. Also that of the Holy Prophet Mani. When he was young, he had the experience where his twin came to him and he became aware of it. And then later it came again, and it began his career. And then finally, at his martyrdom and his death, they became one. So this idea is an ancient idea, that first there is the magical operation, and through these acts you begin to become aware that there is, and let's describe what it is, that there is a portion of the ultimate divine reality that is portioned to you individually, that is the divine spark also, and that is identical to God. And so this is not to cause some kind of ego inflation where my will is what we're going to do and that's the law or else, but rather the idea that the highest version of you that you've not been spending too much time with is already here. I think maybe evidence of this is, just think about when times have been really difficult. Maybe the hardest things you've had to deal with in your life. And you don't know what to do. You know what? When it comes down to it, when you're weary and worn out, in exhaustion, you can call out, say, "I don't know what I should do." Then it comes to you. You know what you should do. And oftentimes there's an intercession by our human personality that says, "Oh, that would be really hard. Maybe I'll just skip that one." But, owing to the timeless dimension of the ultimate Godhead, of the ultimate experience of reality, it's not bound in things that have already happened and that may happen in the future and that we're in now, but that it's outside of time. That there is an eternity that time is a counterfeit of. And so, in that way, that version of you that's makes it, you can reach out to and touch now. There's a version of you that is already ultimate, unio mystica, united with the divine, that you can know and have the experience of. So that's really sort of one of the powerful keynotes of this holy guardian angel. That first there is the image that we can experience, envision. And then more and more the veils fall, perhaps through this kind of magical work. And that's the purpose of the work, is that the veils will fall more and more. That we're more perceptive to the transcendent. That we can begin to hear the voice. We can hear the voice calling to us. Perhaps it's giving advice. Perhaps it's encouraging. Perhaps it's expressing its love for us. And then ultimately, from vision to conversation, and then union. And I'll give you another example of this. In literature, the Divine Comedy, sometimes known as the Inferno. I think it's known that Dante Alighieri was a Cathar apologist, and he revealed in the Inferno one of perhaps a powerful Cathar secret. It's that all of those people in hell are us, and that we're already there, that we're paid up front, and that ultimately we can walk out. And so that Dante Alighieri is able to go to this place, and it answers the question, how the heck do we get there? Because, we don't have a physical vehicle to travel into transcendent realms. That really it has to be done in consciousness. It has to be done spiritually. It has to be done in a kind of powerful practice where you're not in your everyday kind of thinking, where there is an altering that occurs, a magical awareness. And that in the case of Dante Alighieri, his experience of his divine genius, his daimon, is that it's personified by Virgil, his hero, right? But the same thing happens as in the mysteries. He takes his hand. When they encounter something dark, he doesn't know the words to say. But his higher self knows the words to say that Dante would have said if he had access to the entirety of the narration. So that's really the kind of the thing that the divine genius can do. It can remember the future. It can help us where we are. It understands what we're lacking and what is painful, and can provide a great deal of aid for that suffering. Because really what we're lacking and what we're suffering from is an alienation and estrangement from God. And so the presence of this individual portion that we are also should be of great comfort. And this is the purpose of magic. Now there are people who would say magic is very dangerous. And there are other people who would say, I have some magic for you, and if you want someone hexed, I got you covered. If you need to make it rain money, I got you covered. It could be that those things could happen and could be true, unfortunately or fortunately. But really, those are side effects of this true purpose. And I would also argue that it is absolutely a profaning of the mystery to use this kind of powerful tradition and magic for anything other than getting to God. So one of the prerequisites is that there is a sort of a check against mercenary motives. What do I mean by that? It's, one of the things is before you can become involved in magic, you've got to be very good. If you want to become holy, if you want to be like the saints and carved out of alabaster, you've got to be really, really good. Well, that's not actually how it works. The morality of religion is such that, probably it's good to be moral, but maybe don't make a religion out of it. that really the point of it is that if you have a transformed consciousness, what is the result of that? A transformation of consciousness means that I recognize, I know that there is this divine power within me, this divine love, this essence of an ultimate transcendence. And therefore, if it's in here, my God, it's also in you. And it's in you. And even if you made me really angry and we had problems, I still have to love you. And I still owe you a tremendous debt. And this is really the source of charity. This is the source of rectitude and moral clarity. It doesn't mean we don't fall down and we don't have problems. Let's face it, the saints weren't exactly saints. But however, they had real contact. And, when we talk about the ancients, the thing that Socrates ends with in this dialogue, he says, if I go to the mysteries, Socrates, will you come with me? He says, I don't have to come with you because I'm already there. And in fact, I'm only here to answer the questions. So it may be through this union. Some people are here now. Some saints have come to answer the questions. And thank you. If you're one of them, I appreciate it very much. And it's incumbent upon us not to be the ones in the narration who ask the dumbest questions. So, but inevitably we will. Inevitably we will. But really what can happen is that we can have that mystical union where we become our true selves and maybe laughed at and mocked by society and the regular world when we put on the horns and dance around the fire in the chalky cave. And if we find ourselves in such an illustrious position, may there be a tremendous ecstasy that permeates across the world. And with that, I thank you very much. And Bishop Heller, I thank you. Thank you. Bishop, I don't mean to introduce anything uncharacteristic of the normal flow of the way we do things here, but would it be right if I took some questions?
Sure.
Would anybody like to ask a question? And the question should be a question that doesn't end in "don't you think?" So, anyone have any question?
I wanted to thank you for this beautiful, eloquent talk. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the bishop. Thank you so much. And I was curious as I was listening to you that if you would share, if you've had this experience yourself, this journey of transcendence and this experience with the divine, that if you would like to share.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment very much. Listen. It's a hierophant can only take you as far as they've been. And I promise you that our bishop is here to answer the questions. And that I think we all serve him here. And I think having a life of service is very important. And that itself is a gift of consciousness. I don't purport to have grand, profound overshadowings of Daimon's things, although I have been very lucky to have had wonderful glimpses, although momentary. They're enough for my life. And, that's the thing about Gnostic experiences, I think everyone has experiences, but the problem is the everydayness. Society says, you should ignore that. That's indigestion, or that's, you stayed up too late. Which, who's to say that God can't also work within the economy of nature? And I think that's also true. So it may be through indigestion or staying up too late that we can have an altering of consciousness. And I have certainly had many alterings of consciousness, and I am having one now. So thank you for joining me in that one now. But to whatever extent and dimension that it is Gnostic, I would say yes, it is Gnostic. And I would say rather than elevating it to some great platitude, I would say that we're all having and have had these kinds of experiences, and that what is very important is just not to ignore them, and to let them take hold and let them have the meaning and significance in your life. And so maybe another opus is an opus of recognition, in spite of the secular world diminishing. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, my friends, thank you very much. Thank you.